The movie screen was already glowing against the summer darkness when Hannah suddenly opened the passenger door, looked at me with tears in her eyes, and climbed into the back seat. For a moment, I had no idea what was happening. Then she whispered that she had just received news that could change her entire life. The movie had barely begun, but neither of us was watching anymore. Sometimes, the most important moments happen when the plans you carefully made fall completely apart. If you believe that kindness, hope, forgiveness, compassion, and second chances can change someone's life, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. You never know whose heart might need a little hope today. My name is Caleb, and I had lived in a quiet neighborhood outside Nashville, Tennessee, for almost 6 years. I wasn't the kind of person who knew everyone on the street. I went to work, came home, watered the small garden behind my house, and spent most evenings trying to rebuild a life that had become unexpectedly quiet after my father's death. Across the street lived Hannah, a thoughtful woman in her early 30s who always seemed to be carrying more responsibility than she admitted. We had become neighbors rather than close friends, exchanging groceries when one of us had too much, helping with packages, and occasionally talking over the fence. One Friday evening, I noticed Hannah sitting alone on her front steps, staring at an envelope. She looked worried, so I asked if everything was all right. She forced a smile and said she had been having a difficult week. I didn't press her. Instead, I mentioned that the old drive-in theater about 20 minutes outside town was showing a classic movie that night. I had 2 tickets and had originally planned to go alone. To my surprise, she agreed to come. The drive was peaceful. Hannah talked about ordinary things, her job, her garden, a bakery she loved downtown. But every few minutes she became quiet again. I could tell something was bothering her. I wondered whether she regretted coming, but she kept looking out the window at the passing lights as though she was trying to gather courage. At the drive-in, we parked beneath a wide summer sky. Families sat in lawn chairs beside their cars. Teenagers shared popcorn, and the enormous screen illuminated the rows of vehicles. For the first time that evening, Hannah seemed relaxed. She laughed when the opening scene began, and I realized how long it had been since I had heard that laugh. Then her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and immediately stopped smiling. She read the message twice, placed the phone face down, and stared toward the screen without seeing it. I quietly asked whether she needed to go home. She shook her head. A few minutes later, she suddenly opened her door, walked around the car, and climbed into the back seat. She sat there with her hands folded tightly, trying to keep herself composed. Then she whispered that the movie could wait. She finally told me the truth. The envelope I had seen earlier contained a notice from her landlord. The building she rented was being sold, and she had only a short time to find another place. At the same time, her younger brother, Nathan, had lost his job and needed help getting back on his feet. Hannah had spent months pretending everything was manageable because she didn't want anyone to worry about her. She wasn't afraid of moving. She was afraid that one more disappointment would prove she had failed at building a stable life. I understood that feeling more than she realized. After my father died, I had spent years believing that being strong meant never asking anyone for help. I told Hannah that sometimes strength wasn't carrying everything alone. Sometimes strength was admitting that you needed someone beside you. We didn't watch much of the movie that night. Instead, we talked about ordinary things and impossible things, about mistakes, family, fear, and the strange ways life forced people to begin again. Before we left, Hannah looked at me and said she couldn't remember the last time someone had simply listened without trying to judge or fix her. The next morning, I helped her make a plan. We contacted a few people from the neighborhood, searched for affordable housing, and asked around about work opportunities for Nathan. I expected to be the one helping, but Hannah surprised me. She reminded me that I had stopped tending my father's old garden because it reminded me of him. She told me that grief wasn't a reason to abandon something meaningful. A week later, Hannah found a small apartment nearby. Nathan found work at a local repair shop. Nothing magically became perfect, but for the first time, their future looked possible. Months passed, and our neighborhood changed in small ways. Hannah started organizing weekend food drives. Nathan volunteered to repair broken bicycles for local children. I planted new flowers in my father's garden. One evening, Hannah came over carrying 2 cups of lemonade. She smiled and said that the drive-in movie had been the best night she never actually watched. We both laughed. Years later, I would still remember that night. Not because of the movie, but because two people sitting beneath a giant screen had discovered something more important than entertainment. They discovered that sometimes hope arrives quietly, through a neighbor who listens, a stranger who cares, or a friend who reminds you that starting over isn't the same as losing. And perhaps that's the lesson we all need. Life doesn't always give us the ending we planned. Sometimes it changes the address, the job, the family situation, or the dream. But a difficult chapter doesn't mean the story is finished. There can still be kindness after disappointment, courage after fear, and a second chance after a season that seemed impossible to survive. If this story touched your heart, please support the video with a like, share it with someone who could use a little encouragement, and subscribe so more stories about hope and kindness can reach people who need them. Before the story ends, leave a comment telling us about one small act of kindness that someone once showed you. Your comment might remind another person that good people still exist. And somewhere outside Nashville, beneath an ordinary summer sky, a drive-in movie screen continues to shine. But for Caleb and Hannah, the movie that night was never the story worth remembering. The real story was what happened between two neighbors when one of them was afraid of tomorrow, and the other simply stayed long enough to remind her that tomorrow was still worth facing.